ever notice that when you like go back and try something that you used to think that you used to like, and you compare it to what you're using today, and I mean, you could have two. There's a couple of reactions you could have, but obviously there's an experience to be learned when you go backwards or go back to something you had. It could have been 20 or 30 years ago, you know. Something you ate back then when you were younger, listening to music, what the music is you listen to, the speakers you were using, anything.
You try it again and it's not quite what you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's common.
Yeah.
Well, you took the slow way around. Slow passage of it slowly changed for you. But going back is abrupt.
Well, that's true.
You know?
Yeah,
Like,
it's instant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like going, that's true. It's like you probably forgot all that slow change, in other words.
Right.
That occurred over whatever period of time.
Well, you might have had a lot of changes too.
Well, yeah, right. Right.
But now this is
you
going
never went
right back, not slowly, gradually back.
You know, like people probably have stuff in their closets. You know, you could just like take a look what you got in the basement stored on a shelf somewhere, right? Go around and look around, just find something that you used to use and just try using it. See anything, you know, an old shaver.
I just ran into this actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found in my closet and I had my old CD player, you know, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know,
it works.
I don't have any batteries on hand to put in it, so I don't know.
Probably. You gotta try that.
Yeah. But yeah.
Wait, we're talking about a shelf desktop?
No, portable.
A portable, yeah. Oh, so you need a pair of
double A's, I think.
Need some Walkman headphones to go with it.
Well, yeah.
Some JetBlue earbuds. They don't give you earbuds.
No, you got to pay for them now.
Oh, they charge you for them?
Yeah.
That sounds about right. They charge you for everything.
Yeah.
I do remember there were a lot of things that at the time I thought, this is great, it's all you need or whatever, especially with technology that seems to be more common. You get a new phone and maybe you think, oh, it's not that much better than my old phone. My old phone wasn't that bad. But you wait 2, 3, 4 generations and you go back and it's, whew, you can't even imagine how you use this device because it's so slow and the screen's terrible and the camera doesn't work and all these things. But you remember when you were using it, it was fine, right?
I have at least 3 or 4 gen back iPhones, and they're considerably smaller for one thing.
Well, yeah.
It's like really tiny.
Yeah.
And then you power them up, which they barely hold the charge, so you usually got to plug them in to power them up.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you look at the screen, it's like, I mean, it's not bad, but wow, does it bring back memories.
Yeah, especially you go to like iPhone 4s and they're like so little.
Yeah, right.
They got like the big forehead and chin on them.
Yeah, you could barely even make out the text anymore.
It's like, how did we text on it? Yeah.
You're so used to the sharp letters.
My thumbs were the same size at that point. How did I do this?
Yeah, I don't even, so it's kind of funny when you think about it. And, you know, audio's like that too. I mean, everyone's upgraded over the years, changed amplifiers, changed receivers, changed headphones, changed cabling, you name it. You go back sometimes and you're like, well, I mean, it could be a good experience too.
Oh, yeah.
It could be good.
This is surprisingly good.
Yeah, because there's stuff that in the old stuff that you probably did like that you probably never ran into again. I know I've run into that.
Technology is not one of those things usually ever, though.
Not with tech, no. But with sound,
right?
You know,
that's different.
The more profound thing, though, I think, is moving forward. A lot of times people don't really notice a difference. It's hard for people to really see the benefits of a new thing over the old thing because they're comfortable with the old thing. They've used it a lot in it. To them, they think it does what they need it to do. So oftentimes where you really notice the benefit of the new thing is going back. You get familiar with the new thing and maybe you thought, oh, this is such a minor change. It's only a little bit better. But then you spend time with it, you live with it for a while, and you go back to the old thing. And that's usually where more people find really the big differences between the two. Because now you're used to the better thing. You go back to the worst thing, and you really see what this new thing was giving. And oddly enough, it's usually difficult to see it all at once. It's usually difficult to try a new headphone or new amp and say, wow, this is so much better in all these ways. Maybe you notice some things that you're more experienced with. You notice the benefits in some regions, but other regions you kind of forget. You don't really pay attention enough to notice them. It's not until you really go back that you really see all the differences that you kind of sort of overlooked the first go around.
Well, the thing is, it might not even take 20 years, though, for this to happen.
It could be a day.
It could be, because I know my friend, he upgraded his LCD to an OLED TV, and he's like, this doesn't really look that much better.
No.
And like literally a couple of weeks later, we were at a friend's house, and he had an LCD, and he's like, oh, yeah, you know, it's like, oh, these gray bars on everything, you know, it's like, oh, because you just get instantly used to the better thing. You don't even think it's that much better.
Right.
until you see something
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
not that.
you know, and it's a good way. You know, you talk about A being things. It's a good lesson to teach yourself.
Yeah.
Is sometimes, you know, if you're not seeing it or not hearing it or whatever, or not tasting it or whatever, go back. Coffee could be like that too. You could be on a coffee right now that you like, you know, right? Your coffee beans, something, and you go back something that you used to drink a year ago. This stuff's pretty freaking good.
Yeah.
You know, this stuff, you know, you might like it better.
You got on the wrong path.
Yeah, right. It's totally possible.
Yeah.
It happens a lot. We're people. We're susceptible to that, you know, and maybe it just happened to work out good with the creamer you're using or something, or maybe you got some brand new baller sugar to use, and you know, some sort of sugar that tastes really good. Which reminds me, it's funny. We got this. Just a sidetrack. We got this sugar at this farm store that sells like organic everything. You know, a couple weeks ago, yeah, like 4-pound bags of this sugar, and it's like sugar in the raw, but it's really fine, really finely granulated. Completely. Just had it on a teaspoon just to taste the sugar. Completely different taste than any other sugar, even though they just call it sugar with 5 letters. And I'm thinking that's kind of crazy when you think about it. It's just sugar. You know, but yeah, it made a totally different taste. So I'm just thinking about that because I tried it in my coffee, and it also, of course,
Well, yeah.
you're going to notice a different kind of sweetener in this coffee too. But it's crazy, simple things like that, right? You go back and forth in time, and you're talking about mixing things, how one thing mixes with another, and that whole mix could change over time. It might not be the same that you had in the past.
Well, yeah, definitely. Like when you get a whole complicated system, obviously, then it's hard to even pinpoint what's changing and what was good and bad and all that.
Yeah.
So
Or what you had then isn't the same mix you got now.
that's the thing. Yeah.
So now you throw something in the new mix from the old, and all of a sudden, wow, it's pretty freaking good. It's really good. You know, better than you thought. It's possible. You know, kind of like vinyl. Vinyl's been around forever, you know, and there's reasons why it's stuck around because it works real well. It's analog. It's an analog format. People like it. It's what our ears are. We're analog beings.
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean it's intrinsically better.
Well, that's true.
You got your pros and cons. And I think there's kind of two sides of this coin. You got some people that assume if it's newer, it's better. And that tends to mean they're a little biased towards the new thing. They get a thing, doesn't matter if it's better. They assume it's better, and so it is a little bit better. And maybe you go back and you come to realize the gap wasn't what you thought it was. It isn't actually better.
It's possible.
But there's a lot of people, and if you ask me, probably more people that are hesitant to change. They assume new is bad. I don't want to buy a different thing. I don't want to change what I'm doing. I don't want to do a different thing.
Because you think you're content with what
right.
you have.
What I
Yeah.
have now is fine, right? So you move to a new thing and you go, no, it's not any
Or
better.
you won't accept the fact that you're going to need to spend money to
Well,
get.
that could be a different
That's a big
thing.
factor.
Yeah, yeah.
I know.
You
Of
don't
course.
want
cost
to
is
hear it.
usually a factor,
That
whether
is
you
usually a
admit it or
factor.
not.
Yeah.
It's a
You
very
know?
big factor.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely. And rightly so. Obviously, it's a question of not necessarily can you afford it. Do you value the change
You
enough?
have to justify spending the money.
Yeah. And so sometimes you kind of don't want to hear it. You don't want to spend the money, and you may not even be that consciously aware of it. But this is difficult to do. Generally, I find the easiest way to really get a pretty good impression, especially in audio, is spend a little time with the new thing. If you can, hours, days, weeks, and then go back. Now, obviously, this is very impractical in a lot of cases. But spending a little time with a new thing, even if you don't think it's really any better, trying to get comfortable and relax with it, then you go back. Usually that's when you notice the differences. Even if you have these biases and you're kind of trying not to hear it, usually if you put a little time into it, when you go back, you'll really see, turns out all these things I wasn't paying attention to are quite a bit different.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be an instant go back either. It could be something like, well, I tried this, now I sent it back, right? Now days go by and you're like, now you're back to your norm, whatever you were at. And you're like,
Yeah.
Yeah, start questioning it.
something's not quite what I was here anymore. It's gone. Well, I don't know what happened, but now I don't get it, and I'm not hearing. Now you realize, you learn from the lack of what you had
Yeah.
there, right? And that's kind of what we're getting at. You had something in the new whatever it was, and you didn't realize it at the time. Now it goes away, and you're like, oh, I missed that, and you realize it from the lack of it.
You see this on the forums. You see people that had a thing, I wasn't really into it, but I sent it back or I sold it. And then a week goes by and they go, I kind of miss that.
Yeah, kind of strange how that works.
Yeah.
I think the quickest I've ever seen this happen was one work day,
Yeah,
where I'm listening to a song on the way to work, right? Get to work, and then we're working on like recently, like Diana TC or whatever, and you're just listening intently and stuff.
Yeah.
And you get back in the car, same song still playing on on the way back, and it's like, ugh. You're fine
In the
with it on
car.
the way to work. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I hear
since
you.
you're like listening to audio intently all day,
Yeah, right.
it's not the same anymore.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes your memory kind of gets wiped out as time progresses. So if you hear something, then 2 weeks, 3 weeks go by where you don't hear anything, it still sounds fine. But if you hear something in short enough succession, your memory will be good enough that you'll really remember how much worse or different this thing is from another.
Well, what I tend to say a lot is that people pretty much get used to anything,
You can.
and it's
For the most
kinda,
part,
that's kind of
yeah.
what it is. You just get used to it, and then you become accustomed to that. But then something like stellar shows up and it just blows everything out of the water. all your norms are just explode.
See, it could go both ways though,
blasted.
because sometimes people, it's like too much. You're like
that's
in
true.
shock. Oh, well, this is too different from what I'm used to, even
Yeah.
though it's potentially good.
Right. Sometimes it does take us some getting used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really hard to know if this person's actually truly listening, though, if they're trying to understand. Because oftentimes they might not be aware. They may not be familiar enough with listening to understand what they should be listening for or how to mitigate their internal biases.
Well, a majority of people don't.
right.
aren't
And
like us.
That's reasonable.
A
right?
majority
You're not
of population,
listening all day.
Yeah. A majority of population don't really care.
It's hard to do. It really
they turn
is.
the knob on the stereo in the car, hit the button in the G2G. I mean,
Right.
they're just
Well, I know for me, like, yeah, you can't do that. You can't be like intent on listening, focused for a long period of time. You got to
Agreed.
walk away. You
Agreed.
got to,
Yeah.
But I think the tricky
Or
part with
pass
this one
out.
is people think, well, if I need to listen that closely to it, what's the difference? Dude, it doesn't matter to me. And if, like everything, is more complicated than that. Because I find that people overwhelmingly can and do notice these differences. But if they're not very well trained or if they're not experienced, when they're actively trying to listen, there's a lot of things they're forgetting about or they're excluding, they're ignoring. But with time, just casually listening, they'll notice it. A lot of times it really does pop out, but it takes a little bit of time for people to notice it.
Well, I think you'd get easily distracted is what would occur. It's kind of like, a child, right? At that point where the brain's wide open to this because you don't have any prior knowledge or experience. You don't know what to focus on.
Yeah.
So it's just a blast of whatever, and it's like, so you're going to key in on whatever the first thing is that hits you, and kind of it's as far as you could take it because you're just locked on that. So it's difficult at first, no question. If it's something that dramatic of a change, it's kind of like getting out of a hot tub in the middle of the winter, right? And 30 degrees outside. As soon as you step out of that 99-degree water, God damn, you know exactly how the temperature is outside.
Something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty brutal. So
that's a little more blunt. Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
but that's the contrast you could have, and it's like your body's in shock at that point, so you're not paying much attention to anything except getting something on towel on or getting in the house, right? So you kind of miss the whole beautiful experience of freezing your ass off.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't think it's a good experience actually.
No, it's not. It's not good.
No.
It's jarring.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
quite.
You ever
quite
jump
cold.
into a pool that's like 50 degrees?
Yeah,
my
kind of
God.
just as bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a freaking lake.
Panic sets in
Yeah,
immediately.
yeah. Yeah, the body does not like shit like that.
No.
That's like cold showers. Isn't there some therapy where people take cold showers or something like that for like a minute or two? Or
I don't know if it's
it's
therapy.
supposed,
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to
Sounds
boost your
terrible.
immune system, I think. And I'm thinking to myself, Jesus, I couldn't stand there freezing my ass up in a shower.
You ever take a shower with like 35-degree groundwater? Because for people, especially in warmer climates, around here in the middle of winter, our tap water coming out of the public system,
It's just above freezing.
it's just a crack above freezing, right? So,
It's probably close to 40, but it's cold.
well, I got a thermometer
Oh,
on my water main,
yeah.
and I've seen 33, 34
Come
degrees.
on, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, which is like 1
Yeah.
degrees Celsius.
If it wasn't moving, it'd be
And
frozen.
that's what you would call cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you ever take a shower with that, wow.
Or
man,
even
that
just
would be-
wash your hands with it. It's like,
so
oh
bad.
my God.
That would be brutal.
I don't know how that applies to audio, but
Yeah.
that's a little bit more of a contrast than I think
Yeah,
most people would see.
Probably, but
in
it
everyday
does
life.
it does point out that you lose focus at that point because the change is so great.
It's so overwhelming.
There's no
yeah.
way you're absorbing that properly, and
No.
that's something that going back kind of if you go back into what you were accustomed to or used to, the old shoe type thing. and you determine whether or not that change was something you want to try again or not, you know. So anyway, so much about change. People aren't very good at it most of the time.
Well, everyone has their own way of dealing with it. And it's really hard for you to know externally what they're doing, how they're processing this information. So it's very hard for me to look at someone and say, oh, haha, this is what you need to do, or this is how you feel
Yeah,
about
right.
this, right? Because they're always trying to more or less filter things through their own internal little network, I guess. And sometimes they think positively about change, sometimes they think negatively. And this is going to have a big impact on your experience. You change a thing, you may think it's better intrinsically because it's new.
I don't know. Let's think about something that's the last thing we've done to change, like the last change you could think of where you actually went back. We do it all the time. We probably don't even think about it. So I don't even know if we could pin it down.
See, in audio, all of my changes are very minor. It's
Yeah.
always like a million incremental changes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you're not like
So-
changing everything.
It's,
Yeah,
it's
right.
different. I don't really like make big leaps and then go back. But I occasionally do go back. And then there's a lot of things that I go back and I go, wow, that was awful.
I could think of one. I was doing something. I was doing something in my office, and I had Apple Music playing, and an old tune came up that I haven't heard in a while. It was one of the old Ricky Lee Jones tunes. I'm like, and I turned the volume up because I'm like, because I'm just using it for background while I'm doing something on a computer. I turned the volume up. I was like, oh, that's a cool track. I got to find that. I got to pull out that CD and listen to it again. It brought back memories of listening, like, we're talking like her album from like the 80s or something like that, that I was listening to in the 90s. So it was a while ago. And I haven't heard that track in a while from the album. It's like, must not be popping up in my stream, But I'm like, I got to pull that CD. Maybe want to go home, turn the stereo on, warm up the amps, and put that CD in and listen to the old.
But did you?
I did not.
So was it enough
but it's
for
in my
that?
head, and I will do it. I just haven't done it yet. I will do it. Maybe I'll do it tonight. Anyway, we figured we'd bring up a little bit about going back and forth, and we're people, right? And so it's one way to figure out if there was a change or not. If you didn't hear it up front, go back and then see if you miss what you had there.
Yeah.
And if you don't miss it, probably wasn't a change, or you just don't care.
Right.
Either way, that's fine. On to the next change in life. Take care, everybody. Christmas is coming. Hope Santa brings everybody what they want. Have a good one.